Now that's just cute. Special thank you to all my lovely patrons, especially Nerf Nothing for being an amazing pro patron. Greetings audience, I'm Boomstick, and today we're going to be talking about the Kitsune and its included holster. The Kitsune is a 3D printed top prime springer that takes Nightingale mags and fires half darts. The Kitsune was created by Northeast Designs, the same person who created the Venturi and the Chimera. I've done videos on both of those, so if you want to go back in time a bit, you can find them there. But today we're just talking about the Kitsune. Now I printed this one myself and I bought the hardware from Northeast Designs. They do also have pre-built Kitsunes available for you. And I will say this is a pretty cheap blaster as far as 3D printed springers go. I believe the hardware is around $33 and pre-built Kitsunes are around $120. So for a 3D printed springer, that's not too bad in my opinion. Now the Kitsune features a very neat air delivery system to where the plunger is up here, but the barrel is down here. And instead of it being like a turnaround, it's more of a duck low or something of that nature. Essentially, it's going through a little system and bringing the air down lower into the barrel. Now first, let's talk about printing and assembly. I will say printing instructions and build instructions were both really good. I've had great experiences following build instructions from Northeast Designs. The minor complaints I will say mostly have to do with the fact that I did have to update this trigger a bit to get it to properly fire, mostly because it uses a lot of like the similar catch systems that Northeast Designs has, where the trigger is literally connected to this 3D printed link which goes back to the actuator back here. And I was having catch issues, but I modified the trigger a little bit and it works fine. From what I understand, that issue has been resolved, I think. But if you're in the Northeast Designs Discord, I have linked that in their Discord as well. So you can find the modified trigger that I made if you need it. I will also say that it did include padding to go in both the ears and under the catch actuator. I decided not to use them just because I thought it took away from the little cutesy design I had going on here. Because as you can see, it does feature a pretty unique style of priming with these two cute little fox ears here. I've found the best way to prime it is just to put one finger in between the two ears, wrap the hands around either side, and then prime back. As you can see, not the most comfortable prime. Not bad, but it's definitely unique is what I'll call it. It's the first time using it, most people do not like it at all. I've gotten used to it, so I don't mind it as much, and we will come back later to my thoughts on that. And speaking of comfort, let's talk about this grip. I have some complaints. Firstly, there's a bit of wobble in this grip here. Now that could be from just my own printing tolerances. I'm not completely sure on that, but I definitely am not a fan of the wobbly grip. And there's something that you might even be able to see. The mag release is right here. I've not met a single person who have liked this mag release here of the couple of people I've talked to who built it, because it's right where my finger likes to rest, which is incredibly uncomfortable. Now, I've not had an instance where I've accidentally bumped it, so that's not the issue. It's just that it's not comfortable for my hands to hold this grip with the mag release being right there. I find that incredibly uncomfortable. Again, I've kind of gotten a little used to it, but I do think that it's a uncomfortable grip design. We've already talked a little bit about the awkward priming, but one thing that we haven't talked about yet is the changeable barrels. The Kitsune also features a neat little quick change barrel system to allow you to take a short barrel out and put a longer barrel in. They also came with multiple spacers. Now, I don't really recommend the max spacer, so I'll just be talking about the mid spacer here, mostly because the max spacer had reliability issues and rather large ranges as far as the FPS, so very inconsistent FPS ranges. But with the mid spacer and the long barrel, I'm getting between 180 to 200 FPS with the long barrel and 165 to 175 with the short barrel and the mid spacer. With no spring spacer, I was getting 150 to 160 with the short barrel and 170 to 180 with the long barrel. So I would just stick with the short barrel, in my opinion. Now, obviously, once you start using community darts, your FPS is going to dip. I think I was getting 140s to 150s off of community darts, which is why I was able to take it to some 150 FPS games. There's one thing I haven't tried, and that is putting a 788 spring in here. My good friend and fellow co-host on the Dart Jam podcast, Nate Nathani, otherwise known as Edis Arms, also known as many other names, they put a 788 spring in it, which made priming way easier, and obviously it's going to get you less performance, but it'll bring you down to a kind of neat little HVZ pistol, which I do think this would actually do rather well with a light spring, so easy primes, and pretty compact. Obviously not as compact as some other pistols. It's definitely no zinc in that regard, but it's cutesy look, and especially depending on how you print it, definitely safe for campuses. Now let's talk about the holster. I found that the holster works very well. It does get a little tricky putting it back into the holster because it has these two little notches on either side that coincide with the notches on the side of the Kitsune. So if you don't line it up correctly, so if I'm trying to put it in more like that, not the right angle, it won't go in well. So it does take a little bit of practice getting used to putting it into the holster without fumbling over it. But overall, it's a nice addition to the Kitsune, especially if you're using it as a backup or a secondary. But that's enough of the general talk about it. Let's take it to a game. Once I finally got the Kitsune performing reliably, I took it to the Southern Maryland House of Nerf, which has an FPS cap of 150, and it performed rather well. Obviously, the awkward priming did make it a bit more difficult to rapid fire, but I did manage to get several really decent shots. With my modified trigger, the firing was snappy and reliable, so if you take your time and aim your shots, you'll do rather well. Obviously, this is not a good blaster to run and gun with, however, it would be a decent backup in case of a jam, or just a nice little compact pistol to hide behind cover and sneak your way up behind enemy lines. Now for my final thoughts. And if you're wondering why I'm holding my Venturi, it's because these two are rather similar. Not necessarily in how they prime and work, because obviously the Venturi uses a turnaround system, is obviously a lot beefier. This one's set up for angled mags. But they kind of fill the same niche. Obviously the Venturi is much more of a hand cannon than the cutesy Kitsune, but they're both that mag and grip pistol. And my thought basically is this is the cheaper version of the Venturi. Now, that comes with, in my opinion, some drawbacks. One of which, the Kitsune should absolutely be rear prime, because this top prime situation, it's not comfortable. You will not enjoy priming it this style. Even though I've gotten used to it with time, most people will not enjoy this top prime grip style, especially with those higher spring loads. And this leads me to my other issue of why this video kind of took so long. It took me a long time to find a game where I could get the Kitsune to actually perform well. Every time I tried to run it closer to those 200 FPS ranges, my darts were just whirly-bird all over the place. Now, obviously, I'm not running it with a SCAR, but there's no way to put a SCAR on this thing. It doesn't fit when you have this barrel over here. And even when I tried running the longer barrel on the shorter post here with the SCAR, it still just wasn't performing well. So it took me quite a few games. Eventually I went to Southern Maryland, as you saw, put it at 150, and was actually getting some decent performance out of it. So I really can't recommend this for the 200 FPS setup. I just don't think it works well from my experience with the blaster that I built. Could it be issues with the way that I built it? Sure, that could absolutely be an issue, but I can only tell you what my experience has been. But if you want to run this at 150, I absolutely, like, if you like this cutesy style, this could be a lot of fun to run around the field. You have to get used to that top prime mech, and you have to deal with this uncomfortable grip. But it is a very adorable, quite lovely designed blaster in how it looks. So I'm a bit conflicted on this one, mostly because I do like how it looks. But I don't like the grip, I don't like the top prime, and I don't think that this modular setup, as cool as it is, works well because I've only been able to get good performance out of it at 150. Now, I do want to, in the future, take this to an HVZ game with a 788 spring and see how that does, because when I got a chance to test out NS Arms Kitsune, I'll try to have a picture of it somewhere over here. We'll figure it out in post. I did actually find I enjoyed it way more. So I can only really recommend this, A, for 150 FPS games if you don't mind the uncomfortable grip and the weird top prime, or for HVZ where that top prime is a lot lighter, which makes this priming action a lot smoother. So let's go ahead and bring in our little scoreboard here. Kitsune, you're going to go there. Now, if you really want a 200 FPS pistol, I do recommend the Venturi. It's got a massive grip and it's a real hand cannon, but I love the Venturi. This is one of my favorite mag and grip springers, and I still recommend the Venturi. It's got a few quirks, but overall it performs great. It's got a nice smooth prime, this big chunky T-spring, T-pull, I can use words, works beautifully. It has a pretty neat little tear down system here which works well. I love the Venturi, so if you want a more high-powered mag and grip springer, check out the Venturi, also by Northeast Designs, because if that's what you want, I recommend this. If you want to go low power, grab the Kitsune. Where I think the Kitsune really will shine is that low-powered springer that's just so cute it'll throw people off. So if that's what you're looking for, grab the holster, get a 788 spring, or just run it at the 150 FPS setup, and go have fun, because it is still fun in just how cute it is. So that's been my thoughts on the Kitsune. If you have any thoughts, definitely leave them down below in the comments, and yeah, give the video a like, subscribe if you want to keep seeing more, and keep an eye out, because I've got plenty more in store. Let's check out.